Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started. We're over 50 people now who connected from around the world, mainly Europe. We had more than 150 people who subscribed for this webinar, so I'm sure there will be more people joining in the next few minutes. But as you all know as well, you can get the recording afterwards as well in case you registered. So the time that will take is 40 to 50 minutes max, so until 20 past 3 Brussels, Paris time. And you can ask questions during this webinar as well. Please use the chat function to do that. We've got a team on it right now who will be scanning the questions, and we make sure to at least take 10 minutes, even 20 if possible, at the end of the webinar to share your questions with Andre and myself if you wish. I'm going to kick it off, and I'll be introducing Andre in a second as well. Very much talking about onboarding and HR tech digitalization today. Got the real honor to, for this series, invite and have the honor to introduce Andre Bardella, who's a global L&D project manager at Sodexo Benefits and Rewards, and he'll be introducing himself later during the webinar in 5 to 10 minutes. The one who's talking to you right now is myself, Stijn de Groef, Belgian. I am the founder of Talmundo, today the CEO as well. I used to be head of talent in different companies, including Goodyear and Swarovski, where I learned the good, the bad, and the ugly way in terms of HR technology, I would say, and how it can help support what HR is trying to achieve. And in a perfect world, it can do so much. But I've also learned that in not such a perfect world, HR tech can sometimes be a bit of a pain in the ass. We are going to talk about HR tech. We're going to talk about onboarding in a bit more detail as one example. Just one statement. I think you all realize that by now. Look at the fairs that are going on, look at the articles that are being written about this, but also look at the investment that is going into HR tech. HR tech is clearly here to stay, which basically means it's probably doing something right. Or some vendors and some of you are doing something right, and it's really helping the bottom line of HR. And that's what it's all about. In the end, it's about bottom line, what you're achieving, and technology can basically help you. It can be part of the puzzle, but in itself, it's never going to be the solution, obviously. When I look at HR, and when I've been running these different HR jobs, and even when I'm running Talmundo and the people here today, these 4 statements have always been my golden rules or my bottom line. Basically, treat others like you want to be treated, especially treat your employees like you treat your customers. The whole thing about employee experience. Make your new hires feel good, help them grow and progress, and use that innovation. Use innovation that is available today to help you do this, which can be HR tech, but it's not always the case. Can also be a new methodology, a new way of working, a new way of looking at things. Innovation in general, I would say. I think most of us know about these rules. Still today, lots of things in HR actually go wrong or can go wrong. And we've actually listed some of the reasons why people leave companies. So, which basically means what are some of the key things today that are still going wrong in maybe your company, my company, many companies around the world. The top 5 is on the left-hand side. Lack of career development, work environment, management behavior, work life, and employee disengagement. These are some of the key issues. Even if you try to live by those HR golden rules, you'll always have challenges. In case you have challenges, those seems to be the top 5 challenges that most of us are facing and trying to address. So I'm sure you've got projects, you've got teams, you've got tools to try and address these. And this is where HR tech can come in. Again, HR tech is definitely not going to be the one and only solution, but it can definitely be part of it. And I'm just calling out 1 or 2. I think lack of career development is clearly one that you cannot just address with HR tech, but it can definitely be an enabler and a supporting tool. Look at the digital academies and the online learning trend that's been going on for at least 10 to 12 years now. I remember myself implementing a learning software and LMS, Moodle based at Goodyear about 7-8 years ago. In the meantime, things have evolved significantly. If you look at what we were trying to do with so many good intentions and what's available on the market today, social learning, video learning, pretty amazing stuff. Tools for employee feedback I find fascinating as well. Look at interesting startups like Impraise and TrueQ in the Netherlands, for example, Tiny Pools in the US, this continuous feedback. So get rid of the annual appraisal and the very static objective setting mid-year, end of year. You do this way more instant and continuous through very helpful tools. Beautiful developments. One other before I touch on onboarding a little bit is the whole work-life balance and well-being trend. So much technology out there today, which delivers you fascinating insights in terms of how people feel, their health as well. My wife just bought a Fitbit 6 months ago. She's kind of addicted by now. I must admit, it's fascinating what you can get out of it and how much you learn about yourself and how well you sleep and your heartbeat and how that's linked to your physical health, basically. I'm sure there's a fascinating field for companies as well. Always within a certain legislation, of course. Funny enough, we just launched our white paper today on GDPR in Europe. I'm sure all the Europeans on the call, they know what I mean, but GDPR, the whole new legislation in Europe around data protection, data privacy is a very important one, is a key one. It does definitely put some limitations on what you can do with some of the HR technology. Look at people analytics, but also look at the wellness trends and what you're measuring there. Beautiful data, but you got to see. You got to really analyze what you can do and how far you can go. When you talk about employee disengagement and sometimes unproductivity, you definitely look at onboarding as well. We see that all the time. We see so many companies investing tons of resources, time, money into finding the right people in today a tight labor market, but then not much is happening. The people are signing a contract. It may still be a couple of weeks, even a couple of months until you start at your new employer, but you almost start being disengaged and you haven't even started because you don't see that connection. You don't feel that connection anymore. And that's where onboarding comes in, and that's where onboarding technology comes in. So that's the field that we specialize in, and that's where we try to add our bit of magic to the HR tech space and to the HR space, I would say. And that's where I'd love to pick your brain for just a few seconds to just get a bit of interactivity going. If you look at onboarding, we now zoom in from HR golden rules to pain points, and onboarding being one of those pain points that you can address with not just technology, but with great programs and buddy programs and mentoring programs and what have you. First question is, my company has a structured employee onboarding system in place. Is that a true or a false in your case? And you can actually vote right now. This is instant voting. We give you a couple of seconds to vote, and then we'll look at the results just to see on this one particular piece, one of the many things you're trying to do in HR. Where are you, or where are companies today? Let's take a look at the results if we can. Let's see, true, false. So you see almost 50-50. So the majority has a structured program in place already. The minority hasn't. I have to admit, when we asked the question during one of our first webinars about a year ago, this was the other way around. So we saw less companies having structured employee onboarding processes. So that's clearly a trend, and I can only say a positive trend, I believe, because structured onboarding will really help people to be productive faster and boost their engagement. Second question that we had up there for you is, our onboarding process tends to happen, and then we have a number of options for you: online or internet or digital in a way, via email, in person, we do it all in person, or a combination of the above. So the ones that do have a process in place, how do you tackle onboarding today? Does HR tech already come into play, or maybe not? Is it still a face-to-face process, which, to be honest, can work perfectly fine as well? May have some challenges scaling it in a way, but definitely also for smaller companies, a way to go. Looking at the results, Many of you, clearly a combination of the above, something that we would advocate probably as best practice at some point as well. Some go for online intranet only, 7%, through email 2%, in person 28%. That's a clear statement. So I think we have a rather mature group of HR people on this call when it comes to onboarding. Last question that we had up there: our onboarding program lasts for. There's an interesting debate right now in the HR scene about, and we often get the question as well: what's the ideal onboarding time? When does onboarding start? When does it end? So how long is your process? Is that just one day, like the first day at work, and that's when you get onboarded and then off you go? 1 week, 1 month, more than 3 months? So give us your votes. And let's take a look at the results. There we go. 1 day, that's interesting. So there's definitely the majority that have a process, but the top answer is it takes us about 1 day, which I would probably argue it's not best practice. There's a lot you can do in 1 day, especially that happens structured and very organized, but there's only so much you can do. And we've kind of learned now that onboarding ideally starts from the moment you've signed a contract, which could be in corporate jobs 2-3 months away from actually starting, up until 3 to 6 months into the job. So in most cases, more than 3 months in total. We see that in some businesses like retail, for example. People only sign a contract literally a couple of days before, and that's where you want to be really to the point, really focused. And onboarding, according to the feedback from that target audience, shouldn't be taking too long for them. They want to be up and running really fast. So that's where you could argue 1 month could be sufficient. So it could also depend on industry and education levels and what have you. So thanks for your input. Interesting trends. We're going to continue on the topic of onboarding, and instead of me talking theory or talking models or talking my experience, we're actually going to move and jump 2-3 slides and move to Andre to look at a very concrete case. We had the pleasure to work with Andre, and we continue to work with his team for the coming months and years, I hope. But we've just gone through a whole configuration of their onboarding application, and it's helping Sodexo to improve their onboarding around the world. But Andre is way better positioned to talk about this than myself. So Andre, for the next 20-25 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Time, for this introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak about our onboarding process on behalf of Sodexo as well. Can you just confirm me that you can hear me well, because I just unmuted my phone?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone that are part of this webinar today. Very happy to be with you and to share a little bit on the Sodexo experience on improving our onboarding process worldwide. Before we jump into details, I just would like to give a brief introduction about myself. So, as you can see, my name is Bardella, and I'm currently the Global Learning and Development Project Manager for one of the Sodexo divisions called Sodexo Benefits and Reward Services. I've been working with HR for the past 10 years with a specific focus on learning and development, and even more specifically on how to improve performance of sales teams through HR practice. I am originally from Brazil, and that's where I started my career in HR, working for a global consulting firm there. Later, after joining Sodexo, I had the chance to work also in Singapore, and since 2015, I'm based in our headquarters here in France. As I said, working for one of the 3 activities of the group called Sodexo Benefits and Rewards. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sodexo, but Sodexo as a group is among the top 20 employers worldwide, even though Sodexo Benefits and Rewards is one of the smallest activities that we have, but we still got 5,000 employees worldwide. We are very famous traditionally because of our services and products related to employee benefits, that is to say the famous meal vouchers and meal cards. This is part of our challenges today, but then I can guide you a little bit more through that as we go here. So a little bit of figures about Sodexo benefits and rewards today. As I just said, 5,000 employees worldwide, spread in all continents. So we have 35 offices around the globe. And centrally, as part of our HR team, we have only 2 people that can dedicate time to overlook after our onboarding process globally. So I think we can move to the next slide, and I can give you some context on what are the business challenges that we've been facing recently. So, as I just said, we're very famous for our meal vouchers, meal cards, and all the products and services related to employee benefits. But as the market shifts to more digital solutions, we also have to put ourselves through questions and start to challenge the way we work and what we provide as a company to our consumers. So this is part of our challenge today, how we can digitalize our products and services and how we can get to know better our consumers in the end of the day. And of course, technology is the way to do it. And we've been struggling and working hard on it to overcome all of those challenges from a business standpoint. If we consider that this is the one of the key challenges to shift our business today, of course, this is also true for HR. And we believe that we have here an opportunity also to use technology to reach our people better. So I think what we've been trying to change through technology, specifically when it comes to digital onboarding, is how we can make sure that we provide a nice digital experience to our employees in the same way that we want to provide good experiences through digital to our consumers. And of course, how we can accompany people throughout those first steps in the organization, as Stein said, not only when they arrive, but even before they join the company in the first place, by helping them to integrate as soon as they sign the contract with us. I think we can move to the next one. So this is where we found ourselves before starting working with Talmundo some months ago. We had already a structured onboarding process for our executives worldwide, but it was really dependent on people's agenda, and this was leading to an issue of disconnecting messages, right? So as we said, we have 35 offices worldwide. In some offices, we're quite small, so we don't have dedicated HR teams. So people had to travel in order to onboard our newcomers in a face-to-face manner. And we're also dealing with a nightmare, let's put it like this, on how to control different versions of our onboarding presentations, how to make sure that everybody had always the good version in hand, and we were passing the same messages to our newcomers worldwide. So this was a little bit the situation before we started to think on how to digitalize this process with Talmundo. And if we move to the next slide, exactly, we have here some of the assumptions that we took into consideration in the first place in order to engage with Talmundo and digitalize our onboarding process globally. So considering that we had only 2 people to be dedicated on this from a central perspective, we decided to start with something that was very simple in terms of content, but yet scalable. So we had to find the right balance here in terms of what kind of messages we want to give to keep it very simple, but yet relevant for people worldwide. So we also decided to start with a small group rather than deploying this process at once throughout the whole organization. So we decided to start with our executives, that is to say, our board members or new board members in our countries. And the goal with this was to make sure that those new executives had a very good first impression of how we were onboarding them to the team through digital, and to act as ambassadors later, so we could push for global rollout in all levels of the organization, the digital onboarding process. So if I can tell you a little bit of the great features that in our opinion make the difference when building a digital onboarding process, and those features we found by using the solution from Talmundo, I can tell you that they have a very intuitive admin user interface, and this definitely makes the whole process easier. So we can quickly customize and change things ourselves, and this is automatically live to everybody that is using the onboarding app. We also have very customizable layouts there, which keep us on track with our main goal of supporting the business digitalization. So this is also something that we can have a look in the next slides by going through a few screenshots of our onboarding app itself. So as you can see here in this first screen, we have just the initial login page, which is very simple, where people can select the language in which they will see content, and later a few blocks with content where they can navigate to start learning more about our organization even before they arrive. This is a little bit of other features that we've been using as part of the app. For example, the introduce yourself, which gives the chance for people to share a little bit about themselves with colleagues and managers before they join. And here you can see a little bit more images on how it looks like in terms of our homepage. So we have there a few welcome videos from our senior leaders in the organization, which helps to connect with people from the beginning and to give a very specific human touch to the process. And here in this slide, we can see a little bit more of how we get closer to people by asking them a few questions every now and then on how they are experiencing the onboarding process in their locations, if there's anything that we could be doing to support them better throughout this process, and how we can learn from their difficulties and challenges locally. We've been working with Talmundo for a few months now, and we got already a few feedbacks and first impressions, which for the moment have been very positive, and I can share with you some of them here. So first thing, people say that it's a very good way of staying in touch with the organization from the time they sign the contract until they effectively arrive in the organization. And this is important today because sometimes people sign contracts even months before joining. So it's really nice to be in touch with them and providing content and the opportunity for them to learn about us even before they arrive. It also helps to eliminate a little bit of anxiety, right? Because when people effectively arrive, they feel already they've been in touch with us for a long time. So it helps to eliminate a little bit of the unknown factor when people first arrive to start in a new job. And finally, it gives a very comforting feeling that you know that you've been supported. As part of the onboarding app, you have access to some key contacts in the organization that you can reach out in case you have questions or any kind of issue from an administrative perspective or anything that you would like to know before you join. So this gives a very comforting feeling that you can reach out to people and ask for help if you need. So those were a little bit of the first impressions we got from our first users. And of course, from an HR perspective, we start to see benefits here and there. So to mention a few, I think it definitely helps us to simplify the way we manage content today. So it's one place where you can find everything, very structured, and it makes very easy both for new onboardees and for HR to find the information they need. It helps us to build connection with newcomers even when we're not present physically. So by building this bridge, we absolutely start to create a better bond with those executives. It also creates a very important learning loop from the beginning, and it creates appetite for learning. So people start to discover more about our organization, about different business that we have, and they may not be aware because they are only working in one specific location. So it starts to create a very good appetite for self-development as well. And something that is essentially and very important, it's saving time. So this is something that we can see already as a time saver for our HR team, essentially for managers that do not need anymore to cascade some kind of information that are already taken care of with the onboarding app, and absolutely a great time savers for onboardees themselves, as they learn a lot before joining the organization, and when they come, they can engage into their jobs much easier and quicker than before. I think this is a little bit of where we are up to this point, and how digitalizing our onboarding process for executives helped us um, so far. But if I can share with you also a little bit of future objectives and future goals that we might be looking at on how to expand the use of this tool internally, I could identify 4 points here to share with you. The first one is that it can be definitely used to help us boost our employer brand worldwide. I think it's a great way to connect with people and provide a first impression, so it absolutely can help with employer brand. It also is a great opportunity to simplify not only the content part of onboarding, but also all the administrative process that happens in the back. So there is a great option that we're not using for the moment that we're turning on very soon, which is how we can use forms as part of the onboarding app to collect employee data before, so we can start automatizing some of our administrative procedures in the back office. Also, to use the solution not only for new onboardees in the organization, but also on to onboard people on transformation projects. And this is what I mentioned in the beginning. This is something that is going in our organization right now. And why not using it also to onboard people to specific projects or transformation as a very good and powerful change management tool. And last but not least, one possible usage that we may be looking at for the future is how to use it as a way of shortening the learning curve of our salespeople. So, as you may know, every time you hire new salespeople, there is a time so they can learn more about the organization, they can be familiar with our products and services, they can learn how to pitch, and this takes time. So why not starting providing them with all of those information even before they join, in a way to shorten their learning curve and accelerate performance. I hope it's been interesting for you. I'm glad to ask your questions if you have some. And I pass the ball back to Stein.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. Thank you very, very much for, I think, a very clear, helpful presentation. We got quite some questions in the chat, I must say. So I'm just scanning through them right now. Let's take one, which is definitely a relevant one, and let me know if you're happy to take this one, Andre. Question from Monique saying, onboarding coming from headquarters does not cover all that is needed on a local basis. True. Do you have a blended program where corporate part is integrated into local part, or how does this work?
That's a very good question. Yes, indeed, executive onboarding is blended. So what we are using Talmundo for is to make sure that we streamline a little bit of the more common kind of information that we can share with people before, and to find a way of staying in touch with them and create a link between headquarters and people joining our locations every time. But absolutely, there is also a different side of induction that is played locally. But this is exactly what I said before. It depends on people's agenda. It depends on availability. And it depends on specific content related to the location, right? So absolutely, this is the way we found to have a good balance between what kind of information we can provide to everyone and how we create a link between people locally and headquarters. But absolutely, there's part of it that is still done in place.
Yeah, and maybe I can add a few words to that. I mean, from a technical point of view, we see a lot of global clients taking the approach of 80 to 90% of the content and the activities are global standards. But it's important to cater for this local touch, which could be as simple as a form. We see forms and data that you collect often being different by country or by location, but also a certain understanding or knowledge about a location or about a certain office on how certain things work is often local content as well. You can easily tag contents and modules in our application and tag it to a certain country, certain place, certain business unit, management level, what have you. So we set that up through a variety of filters. So we see that happening a lot, and indeed absolutely crucial. It does allow you to do a global implementation, but with a local touch. I'm looking at a bunch of other questions. There's a number of questions that I'm trying to group in kind of one. It's about the creation of content, which is needed from, in this case, Sodexo's side. How much time does that take? And how much time does it basically take to go through the whole content collection and implementation phase? Andre?
Yeah, sure. This is a good question as well. I think what we had here internally at Sodexo was we had a lot of content already spread. So it took us some time to gather all of those materials to start filtering what was really relevant and how we could use it and simplify for the digital format, right? So I would tell you really that it took us more time to collect everything we had than to effectively adapt and put into place. I would say that for us internally, we took around 3 to 4 weeks to go through this whole process. We tried to accelerate it by creating, let's say, a minimum viable version that we could go live and then start working on it later to improve the quality of the content and to add more things. And I think this is a very good approach for people or companies that are starting to look at onboarding from scratch. Don't try to get everything from day one ready. Start small and then you build on it over time because it will definitely help you to learn from the way your users are interacting with the content. It will give you some data through the app so you can learn what are the pages that people like the most, what are the pages that people don't really see, and then it helps you to improve the content over time. So if I could give two tips on that, absolutely to be start small and learn from how your users are consuming the content.
Perfect. I'm calling out another one which groups, again, a number of questions. It's about how you get the stakeholders on board for this onboarding project and onboarding technology. Did it take a while to persuade the rest of the company is being asked in one of those questions. So about, yeah, you may want to do this and reorganize and revamp onboarding, but how did you make that happen internally? And yeah, who are the ones that you persuaded and maybe how did you do that, Andre?
It's a good question. When we talk about stakeholders for us here, I would separate them into different blocks of people that we had to convince. Let's put it like this. So the first one was our executives, right? Because it was something that we had to decide to go for and to invest a little bit of time to work on. So this was relatively easy to sell because this is pretty much aligned to the strategy of our organization for the moment. So as we're trying to digitalize the way we interact with our consumers in order to be closer to them, it was an easy sell internally on how to do it for the onboarding process as well. So it pretty much relates to the moment our business was going through. The second point and the second group of stakeholders that we had to convince was our HR teams, of course. And for this, we used a lot of data based on how much time we were spending internally on first managing content, and secondly, effectively doing onboarding face-to-face interactions with people. So this is a little bit of the figures we brought to the table to start a discussion. Of course, there is also the administrative part of onboarding that we could simplify as well by using a tool like this. So I think those were the two different paths that we took in order to convince our stakeholders internally. But really, when you start to look at how much time you spend trying to organize things, even from a content or administrative point of view, you can easily quantify this in figures, and it becomes easier to sell internally, I would say.
Thank you. And looking at the time, we'll take probably one more question. And there's kind of two questions that are a bit similar here. Is it difficult to use the tool? Question mark. And then, which is a little bit funny, can a normal HR consultant feed the tool with actual information? So can a normal HR consultant kind of use the tool or use the backend? I think that when that person put normal, I think we don't see ourselves as the major technologists or the IT geeks, right? So is it something that can be used by HR? Maybe Andre can answer that question as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think this was one of the questions that we raised in the beginning as well to you, Einstein, because we know that this is often the case. We want to go into digital. We want to digitalize our processes, but in the end of the day, we arrive at those barriers that we don't know exactly how to interact with those things. But at least from the Talmundo solution for onboarding, I wouldn't say that this is a blocking point. It was pretty easy first to set up things because we had a great support from your side, and secondly to administrate it in a day-to-day basis. It's quite simple. So it's basically a software as a service. So if you know how to use different normal LMS systems or things like that, you get to use it very very quickly. Huh? It's definitely not complicated from the admin perspective.
The last question that we're going to call out, and I'm sorry, there's going to be 5 or 6 that we haven't been able to address, but we'll try to get back to those people through the GoToWebinar tool. In terms of integration, people worry about how is this like a standalone? Is it going to be a standalone forever? Is it possible to integrate with systems I can see here like a Workday or an LMS? Not sure if that's something you've already been doing, Andre, but maybe something that you would be considering. How is that integrated in your bigger systems perspective? Maybe not just from a systems point of view, but also from a conceptual point of view. Is this a standalone project process tool, or is it connected?
I think for us, for the moment, it is standalone because as we are talking about different countries, more than 30, and every country still, for the moment, for us, they use different systems locally. It would be impossible to do a full integration from the beginning. So from our side, we are dealing it with as a standalone solution. I think connecting it to your HRIS could be an absolute win because it would make processes and administrative tasks much smoother and easier. For us, as we are dealing with a global population and we don't have central systems for people administration, it wouldn't be a thing. But I think you can share a little bit on the possibilities from the technical point of view, Simon. But yeah, this is for the moment something that we didn't experience at Sodexo at least.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, as you said, the ideal state for us is always that we try and connect often with an ATS, a piece of e-recruitment software through which we get the data from the new hire, so you don't have to key it in again into another system like the one we have. And then often we connect with LMSs as well to pull in some mandatory training that people got to take before they actually start. And often sending personal data to ERP systems as well. Those are the 3 types of connections that we often do, which we've done many times before through our API. But it all depends on your tech ecosystem. As Andre said, look, when you have 30 different systems going on in 30 different countries, then there's actually a reason for not doing it. If you have one system in which you run your business and your HR, absolutely. You got to try and get it connected. And when your system is relatively up to date and modern and cloud-based, then that is usually no issue at all. With this, we come to the end of the webinar. There's a few more questions we'll try and address through the chat. There's 2 giveaways in a way. You got the onboarding milestone checklist, which you can download through the GoToWebinar tool. You can do that. You see the instructions right here. So if you got really excited about onboarding during this call, you can actually get going this afternoon if you wish. Even without technology, there's so much you can do already in terms of organizing things a better way. So a whole bunch of hints and tips that we're sending your way. We also have onboardingscan.com. If you like to get a little bit more of a feel for where are we with our onboarding program and approach to onboarding, we've asked you at the beginning if you want to spend 2 to 3 minutes answering 12 questions. We'll give you an instant report with a whole bunch of hints and tips again on how you can further improve the onboarding process that you have in place today. So that's on onboardingscan.com, which is basically Talmundo behind, or go and download the onboarding milestone checklist. And if you're ever interested in the product itself, I'm sure you know whom to contact. Andre, thank you very, very much for being such a great client person and willing to share your experience today. And for everyone on the call, I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And I would say happy Easter to everyone. Thank you and goodbye.